black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. For those of you who are new to the Umoja Circle, my name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and the purpose of the Umoja Circle is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction. And the fact that today, even though we live in the supposedly information age, there's so much bits of information that it can be overwhelming when certain truths need to be evidence of truth need to be found. And a lot of young brothers and sisters that I've noticed are struggling to try the evidence. They're getting a lot of opinions when you get things from YouTube or Facebook or TikTok. Those are not really the source of proper scientific evidence. All right, especially on the topics like I've been talking. This is part 2 of a 2-part series that I'm going to base on the works of a great scholar I want to introduce you to. His name is Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. He's passed in I think 2009. He was born in 1936 and died in November of 2009. And I want to introduce these people like him, or Dr. Henry Clark, or great scholar like John G. Jackson, all these Chancellor Williams. We are looking at the wrong source of information to discuss things of like whether the people of in Kemet or Egypt were black people. Information's out there. Sheikh Anta Diop proved that in 1974 when UNESCO brought all the prominent linguists, anthropologists, Egyptologists, historians together, world-renowned in 1974, and he had 11 different ways of showing that they were of African descent. Him and another African, the only 2 Africans, he was from Senegal, Dr. Ubenga was from the Congo. And they blew those so-called worldwide European and Egyptologists out the water with their, and it's in the records of the UNESCO minutes. And also whether there were African people here in America way before Columbus. Yes, ancient people, and I want to show some of the evidence that Dr. Van Sertima showed in his book, because he said that we are a shattered people. That's one of his quotes that I never forgot. We are a shattered diamond. And the way we have to reconnect ourselves to our past is to pull those pieces together. He said that one of the problems that people of African descent have when they go to try to find things in libraries and stuff like that, a lot of the books, whether papyrus or other forms, were destroyed. Like you had the great library in Alexander was destroyed by the Catholics, Christians, or Theodosius, the Emperor Theodosius. You have scrolls and writings that were found here that were destroyed by the Spaniards, again, the Catholics, because they thought it was the work of the devil. Okay? And then, but they had their libraries still in Europe. Some of those books ended up in those libraries. A lot of the places that were conquered by Europe in their trek across the world, enslaving and colonizing other red, black, yellow people and brown people that they found, and then they had a established order to justify what was done to the native people here in the Americas or the Africans along the west coast and of the inner west coast of Africa, what they did to us for over half a millennia, last 500 years. They had to justify it, so those people were ignorant. Those people were savages. Those people didn't have any kind of education. We brought civilization to them, and this ignored. But whenever they went and looked a little bit under the surface in their researches, they saw that they did have it. And that's what I want to make you understand with this book that came before Columbus. As an example, Dr. Van Sertima said that he's proven, without a doubt, with the current type of technology, with the radiocarbon dating, with all these scientific evidence now, there's no doubt that there were African people and there were the interactions with great civilizations here in America. And one of the greatest ones was the Olmec that I'm gonna bring about. But first I want to talk about Columbus for a little bit. And he also said, like I said in the first show, don't think that he was the only one that mentioned this. Okay, this is the only book. There were white European scholars 100 years ago that did the same thing. I want to introduce you to this book here. This is Leo Wiener. He was a philologist. A philologist is a person who studies the history of languages. And one of the things that he came across in his work, he's a professor of Slavic language at Harvard University. Okay, so he's world renowned as a linguist at that time. He was doing studies on native language systems, Native American language systems. That's what he was studying. But one of the things that he came across, excuse me, was the fact that he was also familiar with African language systems on the west coast of Africa. And he found that there were words that were similar. The words for gold, the words for banana. These type of words were found in native language systems. How could that be? If Columbus was the first one to introduce the rest of the world to the Americas. You know, guanin for the gold. Guanin would pronounce in a certain native language system that means gold too. So he said, well, and he it freaked him out, and he just started doing research. Now let me make a point. Leo Wiener is not a pro-American, African-American, okay? He was doing it, he believed, everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of Africans here in America, okay? Through the language system, then he found historical evidence, archaeological evidence, and all these other evidence too in his book. And he created this, ended up creating, and I want to show you the next slide, the actual book. These are 3 parts, 3 volumes of 1,200 pages of evidence that shows Africa and the discovery of America, volume 1 through 3. Okay, did you know about that? Why are y'all looking at TikTok? Why are you looking at YouTube? These evidence are here. Why are you not talked about in high school or junior high school? You should know about this when it comes to when you talk about Christopher Columbus. You should know about this information. And that's what Dr. Ivan Van Sertima was saying. He said that even though we might not have all the books that once were out there that was written by these ancient people, he said you could still find history in the skeletal remains of those ancient people. You still can find history in the agricultural traditions. There were certain plants that they found that were unique to America. They found in Africa, a particular type of cotton that they found in the Cape Verde Island. The Cape Verde Island is where a lot of people went across to the Americas. Okay, it was a particular type of cotton that was growing there when the Portuguese got there, all right? It wasn't until they had their proper type of assay to check out the genealogy of that cotton. It has a particular name that's very long. I won't even attempt to pronounce it, but they found that it's only unique to the Americas, but they're off the west coast of Africa. It's growing. How did it get there? Okay, there are some people who said it floated across in the currents. Again, there were assays done. There were tests done, scientific tests done. You could do there in certain universities, they have these large tanks that can imitate oceans. Okay, they could test for tsunamis. They could use the same salinity of that, and this particular cotton was tested to see if it could have made it across from the Americas somehow, and somebody picked it up and planted it. They have no answer to it unless they were brought across. There were evidence. The Portuguese understood when they talked to Columbus when he talked about an incident that's found in this next book. I want you to understand. This is a book I introduced in the first show. It's by John Boyd Thatcher, and he translated all of Christopher Columbus's journals and diaries about his adventures across the Atlantic and what he did during those four times he came across, 3 or 4 times he came across to the Americas. Okay, and in one of those inserts of his diary, he on the island of Hispaniola, he talked about the native people telling him about black-skinned people come from the southeast who brought and traded with gold-tipped spears. Not saying that he believed them, but he did one thing for prosperity because they could find the records in Spain. He sent these gold-tipped spears to Spain, and the metallurgists there in Spain were shocked because they found that an exact proportion of material of gold, silver, and copper were found that were being done by Africans in African Guinea at that time, because that's what they were doing. They were asking all the gold that they were getting along the coast of Africa. Okay, the west coast of Africa. That's why they were there. They weren't trying to get to India. They saw gold. Because of Massa Musa in 1326, the Portuguese knew and were blown away by that amount of gold that he spent on his Hajj to Mecca, where he dropped 18 tons of gold along the way that depreciated the gold market for 10 years. So the Portuguese will understand, and it's in their archives, again, but another story, okay? But and so this is some of the things that are found in the writings of Christopher Columbus, that there were black people there, and native people knew that and told them about it. And the Portuguese also understood that there were stories of native Africans from the Mali Empire, like Massa Musa's brother, Abu Bakr, who went across the Western Ocean and was never heard of again. That they were people, they were Africans going across the Western Ocean for hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus. So this is known, but you haven't been told about that. Let's go on. Let's leave Christopher Columbus alone. I want to go on to the next thing. The other thing about this book is where you start hearing about the Olmec civilization. The Olmec civilization is believed to have been centered around the southern Gulf Coast of Mexico area, today the state of Veracruz and Tabasco, further southeast than the heart of the Aztec Empire. The Olmec culture developed in the centuries before 1200 BC and declined around 400 BC. So before 1200 BC, the only reason they said before 1200 BC, because the earliest carbon dating put them around 1200 BC. They were still around for hundreds of years before that, but that's the only scientific they could say for sure, without a question of a doubt, that they were around at least 1200 BC, even though they were there before that. Okay, so that's the Olmec. They were one of the greatest civilizations known at, there might be others, but known in the Americas. And one of the things that will blow you away is the fact of this, I want to go on to the next slide. This was written in 1858, okay? No, this was written in actually in 1862 about an event that happened in 1858. That there was a gigantic head was found at a village of Tres Zapote. That's one of the states of Mexico. Okay, and this article that I'm going to read appeared in the Bulletin of Mexican Society of Geography and Statistics in 1869. It was authored by Jose Meglar, and it reads, and here's what he said, because he went to that village. In 1862, I was in the region of San Andreas Tuxtla, a town in the state of Veracruz in Mexico. During my excursion, I learned that a colossal head had been unearthed a few years before. On my arrival to the hacienda, I asked the owner of the property where the head was discovered to take me to it and take a look at it. We went, and I was struck with surprise as a work of art, this head. It is, without exaggerate, a magnificent sculpture. What astonished me was the Ethiopic type represented, Ethiopian, okay, black. I reflected that there had undoubtedly been Negroes in this country and that this had been in the first epoch of the world, okay? This is what this gentleman said, and he wrote in that journal. Again, this is what Dr. Van Sertimer research found. Have you been told about this? That they documented those heads. Next one, I want to show you what the head looked like that he might most likely talked about. This is that head that was found. If you look at the top, you'll see a kind of a helmet thing. There is another researcher who studied, I think it was an anthropologist, who said that those helmets were similar to what was found in Egypt, in the area of Tanis. Warriors wore those the exact headsets. Helmets with flaps along the sides were worn by Egyptian warriors in the area of Tanis, Tanis, Egypt. But they found this stone head found in 1858. And this is the one that gentleman noticed 4 years later in 1862. All right, the next one was, now this is that same head. Right? You see the side, the flaps. But this was 100 years later in 1938, okay, when there was an expedition done by the University of California, National Geographic, and UNESCO. They combined to rediscover that head. And they went to Tres Zapatas and found it. People knew about it, but there was no scientific assay done from the time of 1858. You know, people wasn't focusing on Mexico for anything ancient. No, those brown savages didn't do anything, all right? But they found this head. Let's go to the next one. I put together, that it's in the book, this comparison to an African, I forgot what tribe he's from, what ethnic group he's from, but you can see the similarities of the type of people that were connected in the Olmec. These are all the Olmec heads because they found that head in 1938, and the Matthew Sterling, who was part of the expedition in 1938, said that when they dug up that head, he was vividly Negroid or black. We call it Negro, but he said Negroid, vividly, okay? So it was no ifs, ands, or buts. That was a black person. Again, when people see these things, the first thing they see or say is, well, that's a black man, not a native person, but a black man, an African, or somebody of African descent. And I just wanted to show that because in 1938 they dug up that head. But next year, between 1939 and 1940, they went to La Venta, which is another area in Mexico, and found a couple of more, I think like 4 more. Let's go on. These are all the other heads that were found. The first one is the one that was found, in 1858, and all those others, look at them. Those are black faces, okay? Well, let's get that. There was areas of San Lorenzo, they found them, La Venta, all these areas in Mexico. You can see them in museums as we speak today. Let's move on. Now I want to show you this as another area. Now we're going to do a little oceanography, another part of that diamond to pull together to show evidence. Those little specks that you see in that box, that's Cape Verde. All right, Cape Verde is where a lot of early sailors would take off to go across the Western Ocean, because 100 miles west of Cape Verde Islands, off the west coast of Africa, that's where they found that particular cotton too. Africans understood that there were currents that led off the Cape Verde Islands that take you like a conveyor belt right across the ocean, which will end up. These are the currents I'm talking about. They take you right across the ocean. You got three particular currents. You got the one off Cape Verde. They'll take you to the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, Bahamas. That's where Columbus first got. He never touched the Americans, so I don't know how he claimed that he discovered America. He never even went on any American soil, either South or North America. Then you got one, the Gambia, Senegal current, that'll take you a little across the top of the South American continent. Then you had the current in off the southern part of Africa. They'll take you right across. All right, so if you want to understand that how these Africans came across to the Americas, these currents will take you right across. You don't even have to row. If you get caught in those currents, you'll go right across, just like a conveyor belt, up into the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of the United States, and you go right back around, and you'll meet the currents going back towards Africa. There exists today. So we have oceanography, the oceanographic evidence. Okay, we have the fact that these native people said that they were trading with black-skinned people. This is, look at the current, takes you right by Hispaniola. And remember I told you that they said that they came from the southeast. Okay, where's that current taking you? Southeast of Hispaniola. And if you want to know how they got across, this was a boat that was created in Africa, and it was commissioned by a Norwegian sailor who wanted to experiment to test that theory about those currents. His name was Thor Heyerdahl, and this was called Ra, and it was done in 1969. And this is similar to the types that Africans were using all along the west coast of Africa. These are the types of, excuse me, these are the types of ships that were said to take off from Cape Verde by African oral history that the Portuguese said. These are the types that were built by Massa Musa's brother. Massa Musa, the one who did the Hajj, but he took over when his brother, Abu Bakr, built a fleet of these type ships and went across the Western Ocean. He was never heard of again. So Africans have been going across with those currents. And this boat made it all the way to the Bahamas, and only because one of the ropes broke. Okay, so the current took them and was proven by Ra, and then it was Ra 2 that proved the same thing. Okay, this is where the Olmec civilization existed. Okay, you see Mexico City up there. Now there is Tres Zapatas, where the first skull is, and those little triangle things where all the other heads were found. All of them around 6 to 9 feet tall, weighing anywhere from 10 to 50 tons. Look at that. That's an African face. Next one. This one was called, when they first dug this one up, they called it El Negro, or the black. Again, people who had no problem, but these European scientists refuse to accept the fact that how could African people be here in the Americas when we didn't know anything about it, because we're supposed to be at the top of the food chain according to, for the last 500 years of European domination of the world. And all the educational system is based on that mythology. But yet everywhere they look, they find people that look like us. There people were there waiting on us. The Olmec people honored these people by creating these heads. And there were certain things that were similar. Not only some of the African words, like Leo Wheeler said, but if you look at the pyramids in Mexico, they're the same area, diameter, mathematical area of the pyramids in Giza. They have the same color, purple. There are certain images that are similar that you find in the pyramids here in the America that you'll find in the pyramids there in the Giza Plateau. Look at these heads. Now that I want to stop there and honor this brother. This is Dr. Runoko Rashidi. Some of y'all might be familiar with him. He's a friend of mine. I've actually interviewed him many years ago on the show. And he's in front of that first head that was found. He said that's his favorite head. And let's move on to the next one. And guess what's on the back of that head, what they found in 1858? African braids. How come you didn't see that? Dr. Alvin Van Sertimer was the one that discovered a picture from that when they did that, when they dug it up in 1938. It was a picture he found in a cabinet that showed that these are African braids on that. African braids. Look at our brothers and sisters, okay? It's not native people. There was some kind of interaction with Africans with the Olmec going 1200 BC. There were cross-cultural ideas exchanged. It's what you do when you do research. Look at that. Etched in stone to let you know that we were here. We weren't just brought over as enslaved people. This is the images that they tried to impress upon our children. No. We were honored by those ancient Olmec people, by these great, great, great Olmec heads that honor. That was the system of honor. They found also terracotta African little statues with black and brown skin that they deliberately made that color to represent the people they were honoring from across the water. So with that, and to the honor of our ancestors, I'm gonna say peace, hotep, bye-bye.